So if you don't find the parts of the building in there.
When did you first come out with your evidence?
Well, from the beginning, but I wasn't being so loud about it. On day one, I was looking in the faculty conference room, like, you guys see what I'm seeing? And they looked at me like I was crazy. This isn't a collapse.
When was the first time you found someone who was actually looking at you like you wasn't crazy?
I didn't, you start talking about it, people look like you're crazy, so, you kind of talk about people here and there, but I thought the grown-ups were going to take care of it. I've got my job to do. They have their job to do, meaning like NIST or whatever. But it became clear that the grown-ups weren't going to take care of it. And somebody needed to. And if I wasn't going to do it, who else was? And still to this day, who else is there? And I couldn't have done it without, others around me helping, like, Andrew Johnson, Morgan Reynolds, Jerry Leapart, Russ Gerst. But there's just a small handful of us. But if this hadn't been done, it still wouldn't, and people would say, well, it's official story or thermite. They'd give you a false choice to funnel you into that, and you never could solve it that way. But in 2005,
I interject something there?
Yeah.
Very briefly, you mentioned those names, and something came to mind when you mentioned the names. We're not a movement. I don't think we've ever all met together in the same place at the same time.
Nope.
I don't think we've ever had a conference call, to work out a plan or anything like that. We've each done whatever it is we felt needed to be done, or, we've asked for help in doing something at a certain time in a certain way. We haven't gone out and sought to, set up a website and then put on all these questions, and I think, and all these these other sort of criticisms of other people. But what I think I was going to say at that point as well is if people who have listened to architects and engineers nonsense, and it is nonsense really, you can go and look at that critique. If you've been listening to this broadcast, this podcast, you can now go back through it, or having listened to it, go and look at their critique of Dr. Judy Wood's website and book and everything, and see. I'd like people for themselves, just in their own way. They don't have to write to us unless they really want to. Just look at their critique, the architects and engineers one, and see if they think it covers all the evidence that's been covered in this 2.5 hours that this has been laid out. In fact, it's almost 3 now, I think. You see if that criticism covers that evidence for yourself, and I think you'll be able to work out from that, if you've got truly an open mind and you've been listening to more than half of this, you should be able to get a handle on what those sorts of critiques do, and that includes, in fact, most of the critiques that have been put out there. The Greg Jenkins one that we've mentioned briefly that comes up, and there are probably 2 or 3 others that get thrown around fairly regularly. So yeah, just look at those things and consider what you've heard and see if the two marry up, or and who's basically should be able to work out who's telling the truth and who isn't. Quite
well, when were these groups formed?
Oh, various times. I mean,
they serve various usefulnesses, and then the planned demolition of them too. Because when I first started, energetically posting the evidence on my website, suddenly there's all this banging pots and pans noise over here. Oh, don't look there, look over here. And there's this, Morgan Reynolds and I resigned from Fetzer's group the Fetzer-Jones group, which was, they were co-leaders or whatever. Fetzer didn't organize, bring about the group. Dave Ray Griffin, I understand, put these two guys together to do this group. And they were co-chairman or something. Well, I don't know what their titles was. But Morgan Reynolds and I resigned in August 17th, 2006. Then, hey, now we're free to do some real damage. Nobody else to except but us. And that's when I put up that first big long series, and we put out this article, critique of Jones's work. Like, Jones doesn't talk about this, he doesn't talk about that, he doesn't talk. Well, let's go talk about it. We didn't just criticize Jones. We said he doesn't talk about this, and then we went and talked about it and started working on it. And as soon as that came out, that was creating too much attention. so that, Fetzer and Jones had this fake divorce and throwing, spit fight. So people were looking at the spit fight instead of at my website. And then it's Judy Wood's fault for destroying the truth movement because she put up this website. Well, I wasn't a member of his club, so what does it matter what I'm doing? And, and so that was, very effective that way. And that's also when, Stephen Jones came up with saying I talk about rabies from outer space and, space bee names and things like that I've never talked about. If anything, I say, well, we can rule out laser beams from space because thermal energy was not the destructive mechanism. And a laser beam from space would be cooking the buildings. So it rules that out. But it is interesting, and here's more evidence of how effective that tactic was about banging pots and pans over here so you don't look at Dr. Wood's website. In beginning of February 2010, there's this big grand release of this Freedom of Information request from ABC News and never before seen pictures. Look at these pictures. Wow. Those were all the pictures that were on my website. People didn't realize they'd seen them for the past X number of years because they were deterred from looking at my website. And so they weren't never before seen pictures. And I've got pretty good evidence of this because I submitted them in my federal QTAM case in 2007. Also, the images on my website don't have the copyright whatever stamp that they put on those other ones that were on the ABC News. I have the raw images. I would spend hours and hours going around the internet looking for images. And if I find a batch, I download them and I note where I got them from. And I downloaded that batch. And I have them and I put them on my website so other people could see them. And so, then there's this, wonderful person, a lawyer, who, saw what I had on my website and went, whoa, that's evidence that can go to court. And, he figured out this, maybe Andrew knows more of the details of this, but he figured out this brilliant way of this approach that in order to file a federal QTAM case, you have to be a whistleblower. And my way of being a whistleblower was to file or submit a request for corrections to NIST, letting them know that their contractors messed up and they're committing fraud. So I notified a government agency of this fraud. I submitted that the 16th of March, 2007. And then that qualified me to file a federal QTAM case, a whistleblower case, because now I had qualified as a whistleblower. You have to be the first one to do it, and you have to show that there's fraud. Those are the basic things. And the courts had started misinterpreting it. Say, well, you have to prove premeditation. You have to prove that they had premeditation where they were standing and where the hour hand was on the clock, and the minute hand, the second hand, and and the nanosecond hand, to the point that nobody could ever win a case. And then Congress said, no, that's not what we meant of this law. This is what we meant. You have to, in order for the case to go forward, you have to show there's fraud, and you have to be the first one to blow the whistle on it. And they had restated that. This is right after the what would they call that in 2008, where the Enron thing and nobody wanted to see where the money was going, and they wanted to have some accountability. Is this big payout that went to the banks to hold them afloat or something like that. And so Congress restated their intention of that original law. It's not a new law. They restated. They call it the Fraud Enforcement Recovery Act, and that applied to my case. And so there's no way they could throw out the case saying that it was I need to show where the second hand was on the clock and whose cousin's uncle's brother did whatever and had what for breakfast. No, I just had to show that there was fraud and that I'm the first one to blow the whistle about this. Well, I had for my request for corrections to NIST, they admitted fraud in that letter. They said, "Oh, we didn't analyze the collapse. That's fraud."
So in your court case, there were no mention of any directed energy weapons, there were no mention of justification, there were no mention of toasted cars, it was just, you are lying, sort it out.
Yeah, here's why you're lying. Here's an example. Underwriters Lab was paid by our tax dollars, so you can't sue a government agency, but you can sue the contractors who are paid out of tax dollars. So here we had the Underwriters Lab was paid to make 2 half-scale mock-ups of a floor span, and then 2 full-scale mock-ups. All right, they were cooking them. Twice the temperature Fahrenheit for twice as long, and they still weren't failing to support load, so they had to call the test. 4 out of 4 times. They could not get it to fail to support the load, yet they signed off on a report saying that fire did it. That is fraud. And and Andrew helped, also come up with, these various issues, and each one of the contractors, there's a set of things, as well as conflict of interest. Applied Research Associates, they're directors and manufacturers of energy weapons, and I showed evidence of that. I even sent that to NIST, and NIST said, "Oh, we didn't know that." Oh, bingo. I've got verification that I was the first to notify them. So they know what they're looking at. Not only that, they have a grant with the U.S. government to know everything about any weapon of mass destruction that exists or is being developed anywhere. So not only do they know what technology it is, they know whose technology it is. And I wanted to see them put under oath. So, here they had the most number of employees on that contract of any of the second highest was SAIC, Science Applications International Corporation, which also delves into energy weapons, and they were also in charge of security at the site. I think beginning the next day, they're the ones in charge of that gate opening where the dirt truck pulled out. They could tell you where the dirt was going, and we wanted to get them under oath too. So there's a long list of these, things we had to, issues. There's plenty of issues going on, and clearly there was fraud. And the lower court judge dismissed it because, he wasn't going to hear a case about who shot JFK or what landed on the moon, and amongst other things, just a whole bunch of nonsense stuff. Sir, maybe you didn't read the case. Maybe take a look. Well, he didn't want to look at it, so it was appealed to the Court of Appeals, and that's when that Fraud Enforcement Recovery Act was in effect that said you couldn't use this other garbage to dismiss a case. So these judges, in their written decision, wrote, "We're going to ignore this new Fraud Enforcement Recovery Act," and then just dismiss the case. So they were ignoring the law to dismiss the case.
Right.
And they said it openly because there's only like 5 or 6 people on the planet that were aware of it outside of that really would care. Andrew, me, lawyer Russ Gerst, Morgan Reynolds. There's a small group of us, and we couldn't advertise. Well, if you're involved in a case, you can't fight it in the court of public opinion. But we can't help if other people do. Trouble is, that was shut down. The Truth Movement. Anyone who talked about it was booted out of 8911 Truth.
So oh, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, what happened with the UK forum? I tried to advertise the case on our UK 9/11 Truth forum, and we had a news segment or news section, I should say, and I put a link to a press release that I wrote about the court case, and I sent that elsewhere as well. I sent it to BBC and various other places. That was in late 2007, and the UK 9/11 Truth forum, Tony Gosling, who ran that forum, moved my post from a news section into a controversies section, as if it was like some controversial thing, when it wasn't. All the documentation had been laid out, and that court case had been in preparation since 2006, and so it had been well prepared. And it was,
that was my first priority. That's why my website was just a file cabinet storing stuff while I was working on it. And then after that, I worked on the book, because I wasn't going to do the book first. I getting that court case out there before it got too long.